I'm kind of a big deal. So I'm here to tell you the actual objective best games of the decade. I won't get a chance to do this again for another 10 big ones, and I'm more qualified than any other YouTube idiot that wants to do nothing more than to piss into your ears. I'll be doing this in chronological order because I refuse to commit to any opinion harder than that. So let's feed ourselves into this wood chipper before I break into the 2020s with nothing but negativity and synonyms for piss. Really, when I sit down and think about 2010, good god is it difficult to pick between Nier and Fallout New Vegas. I always big up Fallout New Vegas as being this absolute masterclass of Western RPG design, but in reality, I think I'm going to have to go with Nier, because Nier made me cry like a big fucking baby idiot boy, a big baby cry boy, tears streaming down my fucking idiot face. It's also probably the finest example of writing I've ever seen in a video game, and I think it ruined video games for me as a whole, because now nothing looks good in comparison. Deus Ex Human Revolution didn't just have big shoes to fill, those were fucking clown shoes. Deus Ex is one of the greatest games ever made, and you can just go back and play the first level over and over again just to see how tightly designed and how dynamic your approach can be to each level. But then Deus Ex Human Revolution came along and actually managed to be not just a worthy successor, but a game I would say in some regards is actually better than the original. It's not quite as dynamic in the approach to levels, but the storytelling is presented in a way much better than characters just talking to each other for 30 hours.
What a shame.
He can't really be... There must be something we can do.
He was a good man. What a rotten way to die.
And the art style really drags you into a unique cyberpunk setting in a way the original never could. It has problems like piss vision being a bit too heavy at times, and the endings being Mass Effect 3 levels of lazy, but as a sum of its parts, I take that golden shower with my mouth wide open. Would never be as bold as to say the game's better than the original, but it definitely stands alongside it strongly. I think it's very important to recognize that the video game medium can be used to do more than just entertain you. It can also make you feel like fucking shit. And that's exactly what Spec Ops The Line does. I really don't want to sit here and talk about and spoil anything in that game. I'm just gonna say it's the best game of 2012 and one of just the best I've ever played, and you should sit down and play it with no preconceived notions. Don't read any reviews, don't read anything. Just buy the game, play it, and feel like shit. In 2013, Naughty Dog powered through and released The Last of Us, their narratively driven post-apocalyptic zombie survival game. A tale of a tormented father dealing with the horror of losing his Game of the Year position to Metal Gear Rising, baby! Character action games are just simple, stylish, and elegant, and there's no one that does them quite like Platinum. They took one of the most iconic franchises in video games and turned it into a genre that you would never have expected from it unless you played as the Cyborg Ninja in the VR disc on MGS1, then you kind of were pining for it. Yeah, so Metal Gear looked like it was over after 4, unfortunately it wasn't, but at least before we got 5, we got Rising. And Platinum really hit it out of the park. The game's not just fun, stylish, the music's fucking amazing, it's one of the funniest games ever made, can't stop fucking laughing, Senator Armstrong gets my goat, I want Jetstream Sam to tuck me into bed, I want Sundowner to play catch with me, but most of all I just want that sequel. Not gonna lie, 2014's kind of a difficult decision for me. I know for a fact that if I'd finished it, Lisa would be on here with no question in my mind, but I've only played a few hours of it, unfortunately. There'd also be Reaper of Souls on this list, but that's a fucking expansion, Diablo III. I'd also like to have put Wolf Among Us here, if it wasn't for the passage of time, meaning that the first episode being in 2013 meant that it wasn't actually in 2014. I'm also a huge fan of This War of Mine, but I find that one a bit difficult to put as the best game of the year. I really love what it did and I respect the message behind it, but I think that giving a game of the year just on the basis of its message is a bit disingenuous. I'd also love to put Drakengard 3 on here, but I think that game's a bit too fucked to recommend unless you got a hole in your brain.
How many times have I told you? Don't roll around in the fucking mud!
So ultimately, I'm going to have to go with Divinity Original Sin. I love the fact that Divinity Original Sin came along at just the right time during the CRPG renaissance, and its local co-op on the console version brings me back to the old days of playing Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance with my brother. Ironically, it's a game I've also not completed, but I've played the first 20 hours so fucking many times due to wanting to change my character build that I may as well have finished it by now. I'm really happy that we're in a year where the Undertale fandom is basically dead, so we can actually talk about it seriously again. Saying that though, because it was such a big standout game, there's not really much I can say that hasn't already been said. All you can do is look at the staying power that the game still has, look at its incredible soundtrack, how charming all of its characters are, and how subversive it is to one of my favourite genres, the JRPG. And like a lot of my other favourite 2010s games, like Spec Ops The Line and Nier, this game also made me feel like fucking shit, despite how comfy it is. I'd probably have to say Undertale's my favourite game of the decade, and Toby Fox is nothing more than a humble wizard. My gut instinct is to go ahead and be a contrarian and give 2016 to one of the lesser known JRPGs that came out that year, like I Am Setsuna, Atelier Sophie, or World of Final Fantasy. But in the end, it takes a special kind of vision to revitalise a franchise as old and as abandoned as Doom and make it as amazing as it was. And Doom 2016 is probably the best example of a soft reboot I've ever seen, managing to take all the advancements in game technology that have come out since Doom 3 and make a game that's worthy to be called part of the Doom franchise. I actually find it amazing that they managed to have the same kind of momentum as the first two Doom games while also being something wholly new. And while the multiplayer was a fucking joke, and playing that multiplayer beta made me extremely skeptical that the game would even be playable, I think you'd be more hard pressed to find a 2010 shooter that didn't have a shoehorn multiplayer mode. Can't say I'm too impressed with the offerings here in 2017, having to pick between some of my favourite games of the decade that all came out in that one. I'd love to put Night in the Woods up here, but unfortunately, despite being a fucking amazing emotional rollercoaster, it's topped by two other games, those being Prey 2017 and Breath of the Wild. And Prey 2017 was a game I really needed to play, really taking all the best elements of an immersive sim like Deus Ex, and putting a spin on them so dynamic that sometimes while playing it you feel like you're playing a Gmod server. But like a really good Gmod server, where the admin's an adult and has thought really hard about balance and made a bunch of custom mods. Not like one of those ones where it's like some kid's just bought a server off his mum's credit card and got dark RP with a bunch of furry porn models. But honestly, as somebody who doesn't even really like Zelda games, I couldn't fucking believe how good Breath of the Wild was, taking elements from Western open world games but then making them good in ways they haven't been since the hit role-playing game Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Like genuinely, it's actually shocking how much the game reminds me of Morrowind, right down to the way you can just noodle your way over to the final boss in the first 10 minutes of the game. And you listen here, my buddy, my guy, my dude, my friend, I'm gonna fucking give you a smack around the back of the nuts if you try and tell me the weapon durability system is anything but a perfect way to not be, streamline you into certain areas where you won't come across super strong weapons, thus balancing it in a way that Morrowind never even did, when you could walk up to the fucking plantation in the first 10 minutes of the game and get a Daedric Daikatana. I do feel really bad not giving it to Prey 2017 considering the sequel was just cancelled by Bethesda. Thanks guys! So drop me a comment down below about the length and girth of your perineum, and the most impressive one will get selected to be sent a Steam copy of Prey 2017. Just make sure to check your YouTube notifications regularly, because I'll leave a comment in response if you win. On a list of crimes from public masturbation to shitting in your friend's kettle, I think the fact that Dragon Quest XI didn't get the recognition it deserved till the 2019 Switch release ranges somewhere in the middle. It's kind of fucking amazing that a game can have such a high budget and such a huge studio behind it and still feel like it has the passion and soul of an indie game these days, but there you go, that's just the kind of thing you get with the Dragon Quest developers. I'd expect nothing less from a game series that both created and defined a genre over the years. But then I wouldn't have wanted to buy the 2018 version either if I knew that I would only be allowed to marry Gemma and not my boy Sylvando. And yeah, I know the game came out in 2017 in Japan, but I don't speak Japanese. I speak the Queen's American. I've previously described The Outer Worlds as a gamified diss track, and I don't think you really need to look any further than the initial launch trailer to see how clear that is. A crew of original developers and some of the finest people who worked on titles like Fallout 1 and New Vegas came along and created something that wasn't just a modernized Fallout in terms of gameplay, but also modernized the satire, bringing it up from something that might be a bit too hard to relate to if you're under the age of 30 into something that you can relate to if you had any kind of job. Sometimes hitting so close to home that I wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night sharpening a guillotine I didn't even know I had. And honestly, I think it might even be a bit too reductive to compare it to Fallout, considering what that shit show of a franchise has become. It stands completely on its own as a masterpiece, and it's my favourite game of the year, hands down. Hey, if you stuck around to the end of this, then thanks very much. I find long-form solo content to be quite difficult to produce, so this is a completely new frontier for me. But really, I want to take this channel in some new and exciting directions in the new year. So if the algorithm picked you as one of the lucky few to watch this video, then thanks very much, and I hope you'll drop a subscription and stick around for some more content in the new year. I'll have a new channel trailer coming soon, and hopefully some more developer diaries for my game Shogunai. I'm also hoping to jump on board some new augmented reality content in the new year, since there seems to be quite a lack of that on YouTube. You'll be seeing some end cards on the screen at the moment as well, so feel free to go check out some of my other content, and if you like some of it, let me know, maybe I'll do more along those lines. Still got a whole document full of unrecorded Always Sunny in the Kitchen episodes, so hey, maybe.
Hamburger.